Good evening, everybody. It's another middle class review, Sunday, the 23rd of September. So, guys, we're looking at something I was talking about on the last middle class review about Australia and our workplace relations and management. Basically, the inspiration I got was from a motivational speaker for a company I worked for 20 years ago when I was a manager there. This fellow was an Israeli Special Forces colonel and he turned entrepreneur. Fantastic advice I got from this man. I'm just going to give you the tips, get straight into it. I'll give you the tips that he gave me about being a great leader and manager. He was talking about a lot of the problems with Australian companies that he came across and he was advising them, and he was comparing that to the Israeli situation. And Israel is an incredible small country. They have great tech industries there, incredible agricultural businesses, really sophisticated agribusiness as it's called. So it's interesting how they not only kick ass on the battlefield but also in business. So here's some of his top tips. He said, number one question he asked us all, who's the number one person in any company? Most important. Some were saying shareholders, some were saying the customer, some were saying the CEO. He said that's all wrong. He said it's BS. The number one person is the cleaner, because if the cleaner doesn't clean the toilets and bathrooms, everybody gets sick and the company will basically collapse. So he said, be nice to your cleaner. That was a very important story because he said you say hello to everybody, you acknowledge everybody, everybody is an important part in a company and they all have value. Tip number two, he said the problem with Australians, just like a lot of the Arab enemies of Israel when they went to war against Israel, Israel often had quick victories against them. Why? Because of hierarchy. In Australia, we're the same. You have lots of management, but most of them are just yes men. They just go yes, yes, yes to some boss who could be in another state, in another capital city, or even from overseas. So a lot of our bosses these days, because most Australian companies are foreign owned, will have a boss from America or wherever. They'll say, oh, we expect you to do this. Make these changes. Have you ever noticed that a lot of companies nowadays, every year or two, you'll have some big change, some new guy comes in, big note himself, and just stuffs up your company. They'll make changes and it just destroys morale. Well, it's basically because your own management bosses are yes men. So they're following the hierarchy. They don't want to lose their company car or their salary. So instead of saying, listen, boss, this really isn't such a good idea, it'll probably destroy productivity. No, they won't. They'll just go along with it. And they'll give you some BS story of why they're making these changes. Ridiculous. Whereas this Israeli colonel said to us, he said, here's the difference. The Israelis, they don't need this hierarchy. When they were attacked in the Yom Kippur War, he said in 1973, they were attacked by the Arabs, surprise attack in 1973 on a holy day in Israel. And what happened? Jewish people mobilized, Israelis mobilized, and in a lot of these battles, there'll be a group of Israeli Special Forces soldiers outnumbered, could be 5 or 10 to 1, but they'd still win because they would kill the leader or the highest ranking officer. Could be in the Syrian army or Jordanian, they'd kill him and then basically the enemy would just collapse. And this is what happens in Australia, sadly, like the people don't just step up straight away. If the head guy is gone, they won't make decisions. And he said this is the difference with the Israelis. If, their officer is killed, everybody is capable of stepping in. And that was a great lesson for me. The other thing is communication. He said you don't need meetings all the time if you basically have people on the ground telling you how the situation really is. Tell the truth at all times, he said. Unfortunately, I've noticed it in workplace meetings. You'll sit in a meeting nowadays and you'll have the head honcho speak and everybody else sits there like a stunned mullet, not wanting to get things wrong, not wanting to say anything. One thing this Israeli colonel said to me was, Australians are too busy trying to pass tests. They're too afraid to fail. And it's in our education system. I even noticed it at uni. I'd get 12 out of 20 for an assignment. And in the end, I just gave up. There were hardly any comments or something on my assignment. In the end, I just started writing like what I thought the lecturer wanted to hear. If that lecturer was a far left-wing communist type person, I'd write everything like that with that bias. I ended up getting 17.5, 18 out of 20 for assignments. Complete BS, but I wrote it that way anyway. And this is the problem in our culture. People are too busy passing tests, or trying to pass tests, but not actually do the right thing and what's best. So these are lessons that I've learned, and I always live by that, and I find you're more successful in the long run doing this. And besides, as this Israeli colonel said to us, he said, the one thing he noticed, he said, a lot of Australians always want to get up in the world. They'll basically be a brown nose. And he just called them straight out suckholes. But he said, who wants to be a suckhole? You know, the type of person who spends 15 minutes of every day talking complete crap to their boss, just talking rubbish, you know, wasting time. And he said, if you're going to be a suckhole all your life, all you're going to end up with is a brown nose. And who wants that? So anyway, all the best to you guys. And as always, stay awesome.